Hello once again. Hey. So I seen Amber Think's video where she was talking about how she's starting to get into tarot, which is awesome. I love tarot myself. And so I thought that I would make a video. And then I thought, geez, there's just so much to talk about tarot. I did a 3-hour class on tarot, and we still just, barely had enough time to discuss the basics. So, I thought I would really do kind of probably like a 4-part video series on tarot. So this will be the first part, and I want to talk about a little bit of the history of tarot, where it comes from. Now, playing cards themselves, which is what inspired the deck of the Triumph, which inspired the tarot. Playing cards can be traced back to China, to the Tang Dynasty, which is 600 or so. That's 6th century, basically, 5th or 6th century. And there was 4 suits back then too, and they were quite common because they were like used for money changing and stuff. And so there was coins, and there was like an elongated coin, but it looked like a staff. And so then later, when they came to Europe, which wasn't really till like the 1300s, it kind of went on the same theme. So the deck of the Triumph, which is where the deck of the Triumphs, which I think was in the mid 1300s, is what the tarot was based off of. It didn't get its Kabbalic roots until more like the 1500s, which brought it into the occultism, and people started using it for divination. Now, there are 2 parts to the tarot. Everybody knows that. There are the major arcana and the minor arcana. The major arcana, there are 22 major arcana, and they're based off the pathways of the 10 spheres of the Kabbalic tree of life. And I don't know all their names because I'm not a big expert on Kabbalah, but I do know enough to how they relate to tarot and the different paths that they have and stuff like that. Now, in my big class that we did, we went through every single path that there was, and got into detail and stuff like that. And it's still, I could have gone on talking for another 10 hours about tarot. So, there are, there's a 22 pathways. Also, if you look at the numbers, there's numerological associations with tarot and stuff like that. But anyway, back to history. The history of the tarot after, the 1500s, when they started to kind of morph it into this kind of occult Kabbalic tool, which it wasn't when it first started. They did things like add the 22 paths of the tree of life and Kabbalic numerology. There's also an elemental basis to the deck. You need to look at the 4 suits. There is coins, which is obviously earth. There is cups, which is obviously water. And then there's staves and wands. Staves and swords. Now, in the original decks, the swords are air and the staves are fire. Now, some people might say, I always thought of swords as more of a fire thing and staves as more of an air thing. And you're fine if you want to interpret it that way. I'm just telling you what originally it was like. When you look at like the Rider-Waite decks and stuff like that, originally staves were fire and swords were air. I personally, it took me a long time to get used to that association. So that's the way it is. So there's the elemental association, which, we'll get into much more later and talk about all the things that are in there and everything like that, and talk about the cards. There's the numerological association. There's also a lot of imagery in the cards, which it kind of stemmed from the Rider-Waite deck, but also from earlier decks. And there's a lot of kind of mythology behind that as well, and things that we can gather from that. And all these things together are what make this wonderful, intricate divinatory tool. And the reason that it's important is because it works. If you've had the experiences I've had with tarot, then it really does work. For example, all right, I'll give you a recent example. And I have tons of examples, but this is the most recent one. On my husband's birthday, I did a birthday reading for him, which is a reading of the year. It's a 12-card reading, and I did the whole year by Zodiac house, okay? Really cool reading. It's one of my favorites. Anyway, it said that, you know, in a month or so, something stupid was that basically something was going to happen to our car, and it was going to be a stupid mistake. And so I thought, well, geez, I'm really bad at keeping up on the oil changes, so I better make sure to get my oil changes, because I'm probably going to forget to get an oil change, and it's going to, like, shoot a rod through the engine or something. Well, I was right about the car having a problem, but it wasn't my fault. It was actually a stupid blonde girl's fault that ran into my husband when he was coming out of a shopping center, and it was her stupid mistake that cost us $2,000 worth of damage to the car. Yeah. Thankfully, we have insurance, but still, it did damage our car. You know, that was with the Chariot connection, and you know, we learned from that. You know, we should, you know, definitely, and that's more than one occasion. And my husband, who by the way, doesn't really believe in any gods, still believes in tarot. So I mean, like, he who, you know, was skeptic about everything, still believes that tarot somehow works. He doesn't know how, but he knows it works. And that's one of the reasons he got so interested in time theory and everything like that. Because if we can figure out what's going on in the future, where does that come from? So, yeah, another story altogether. Anyway, so these elements were brought into the decks. Obviously, the elemental thing was there to begin with, but it was kind of accentuated in this. And there was the major arcana, which are the 22 paths, and there was the minor arcana, which are separated into two parts, which is the court cards and then the lesser cards. Some people call them pips. It's an old term, but yeah, they are called pips for some people. And so the neat association about these cards is that the court cards are all people. And one of the ways that I look at a court card is I don't just look at it as, you know, the message behind it, but I almost always see the court card as an actual person. And I had a friend who I did a tarot reading for, and it showed, you know, kind of this motherly connection with the Empress and everything like that. And then it showed two male pages, and she had just been diagnosed with endometriosis, and she was told she was never going to have kids. And I said, I seriously think these are your children. And she's like, no, I'm never going to have kids. And 4 years later, she now has 2 boys. So, you know, there's just things like that that happen with tarot that, you know, we just see over and over. And some people might say, oh, well, that's a coincidence, whatever. But you know what? When it keeps happening over and over again and you have those same things happen, I have to feel that there's something behind it. So I definitely do. Anyway, tarot was banned in certain areas in Europe during like the Reformation and things like that, but came back later, and now it's one of the most popular ways to divine ever. So I hope to give you guys more information about some of the things that I talked about in this video. I want to do a tarot for numerology video. I want to do a tarot elemental video. I want to do a tarot kind of getting into some of the Kabbalah paths, and we'll go from there. But, you know, be patient with me too, because it takes me a while to get some of these videos up. But anyway, have any other questions about tarot? I'm not the only expert on here. I know there's more people who will probably know just as much, if not more, about it than me, but I'll be happy to answer whatever questions I can. Blessed be.